I want to welcome everybody to the Daily Cheat Sheet here with Golan and the dude. I got to give shout out to El Turbo on Truth Social for asking me when I ever sleep. And last night was probably the worst night to ask me when I ever sleep, Golan, because I was up quite a while. Obviously,
Let me put it this way. He and I had a conference call at 3 a.m. his time.
Yes, I had a conference call at 3 a.m. It was quite early, but it was for important stuff, and it's for stuff we believe in. So I'm willing to set the alarm clock for 2:49, and yeah, thank you for helping me out. I want to get, though, moving quickly. Amanda Seyfried had to come out and take back something horrific. She said something terrible about Charlie Kirk, obviously, and she retracted her statement, man, which is something we haven't witnessed in a while. And it goes to show you that fighting back now is actually working. And going to Jimmy Kimmel getting canceled, and they say suspended, but I'm pretty sure it's canceled, is capitalism too. The company, there's one massive affiliate called Nexstar, probably the biggest affiliate in the business, who refused to put it on their TV stations across America. So I thought that was exceptional of them. They're also in the middle of a $6.5 billion merger. And why tie themselves up with somebody that turns off 90% of America?
I think it's fantastic that Jimmy Kimmel got canceled.
Let's not use the word canceled. I think the word canceled is
fired.
He got fired.
He was fired because he was spreading misinformation, propaganda, and hateful content. I hate the term hate speech. There's no hate speech. It's speech that some people don't like, some people do. Following Charlie Kirk's murder Monday night, Kimmel said MAGA gang was trying to score political points off of the conservative activist's murder. He even suggested that Taylor Robinson, the accused shooter, was part of MAGA, which is blatantly wrong. Everything that's come out shows that the guy was dating a trans person and he killed Charlie Kirk because of his stance on gender dysphoria and trans people. So this is a lefty, indoctrinated lunatic who comes from a really well-to-do family, and he was indoctrinated and did something horrific. And then you had these people on the left trying to justify it and make up excuses or make up reasons that somehow this guy was a right-wing lunatic and it's a gun problem and it's not a left-wing propaganda problem. This is primarily a left-wing propaganda problem.
Yeah, I want to come back over to Jimmy Kimmel, okay? Because I already know ahead of time, I'm going to disagree with you guys on this one. I've been waiting to have this conversation. I've been exercising all day to get my muscles ready for you guys to blast me, okay? I think that if Nexstar didn't want Kimmel's show in the affiliates, fine. That is what we always talk about. We don't want people to be canceled. We don't want people to be deplatformed. We want the audience to respond. We want them to, perhaps certain people not to platform other people, but it doesn't mean we're telling everybody not to do it. Right? Like I said about the actors, and those of you who looked at our Instagram, you can see we have a couple of rants up there about this, which is, hey, you idiots who wore keffiyehs and shouted about free Palestine at the Emmys, every Jew in town should not allow you in their movies. You want to go work with the Nazis, go work with the Nazis. We're not saying you can't work at all. My problem comes in, not when private companies do it, because they have the right to decide what airs in their markets, but when government pressure forces their hand. And at least what it sounded like to me, and feel free to correct me, but it sounded like the FCC chair, Brendan Carr, explicitly coerced them with regulatory consequences. He basically was threatening broadcast licenses. He was saying you might get completely shut down if you don't do something like this.
But by the way, the reason I'll push back is because it's nearly impossible to take away their license.
That's not the point. That's not the point. You know as well as I do that if they're in the middle of a merger and Trump wants to hold up that merger or the government wants to hold the merger, that's an issue, right? Or whether it's him or someone within his government. If the head of the FCC says that, it smells like coercion to me, not like free speech.
Okay. We've been dealing with coercion for the last 4 years or last 8 years or the last 16
But that doesn't, them doing it doesn't justify us.
I think it does. I think it absolutely does.
Then everything that you said about we don't want to deplatform people, we don't want to cancel people is not true.
I'm not even talking about deplatforming. I'm saying that they put the FBI on Christian parents. They put the FBI on Moms for Liberty.
Agreed. That has nothing to do with
weaponized everything. And if we could take some action against a guy who is actively an arm of the Democratic Party spewing insane nonsense on a nightly basis, by all means, use whatever. At this point, the government and the administration should use any levers they can to get rid of this divisive nonsense that this country has been eating for the last God knows how many years. I hope The View gets taken off the air as well. I hope
Okay,
I hope it's for economic reasons.
I'm going to split the middle on this one. Colbert was taken off the air strictly for financial reasons. His show was
100%
losing about $80 million a year, right?
celebrated.
Fine. Jimmy Kimmel had what? 1.5 million people watching his show?
That's right. He had less ratings than Colbert.
And less ratings than Greg Gutfeld, and way more highly paid. I believe his contract is $15 million, and ABC is losing money hand over fist.
Well, then why are they keeping him? Why were they keeping it? Why were they keeping the show on the air?
Because,
I
again,
can answer this question.
Yeah.
Because Kimmel was not just a talk show. I talked about this when Colbert was fired. He's not just a host of Jimmy Kimmel Live. He was hosting the Oscars. He was a corporate utility player. He was a brand ambassador. He would show up every time they did upfronts. He was the event MC for Disney. He was doing cross-promotional stuff culturally. He was one of the faces of it. He's not just a TV host. He's part of the Disney PR machine. And that's why they paid him as much as they did, because they used him for 1,000 other things. And Colbert did nothing but be a late night host, which is one of the things I talked about as a reason they got rid of him. So I can tell you from inside the machine, that's why.
Right. So you're saying that he was still economically viable to Disney.
He was
as an
still
asset
very much
because-
economically viable, yes.
And therein lies part of the problem. So when I saw Disney doing a lot of the crazy stuff, where they were doing a lot of the gender stuff and everything that did not align with kids and family values,
Agreed on that too.
canceled all our Disney subscriptions. We're like, we're done with that company. And FCC Chair Brendan Carr threatened legal action against the network for Kimmel's misleading claims, including the assertion that Kirk's assassin was part of the, quote, MAGA
But
gang.
that's not, the comments are controversial. They're poorly researched. They're stupid. They're hateful. They're mistaken. They're all of the above. But a remedy in a free country is not to yank his show because the government might punish the broadcaster, because satire and commentary and mistakes are all part of free public discourse.
Well, they
Again,
could've kept
can I
him
tell you
on.
something? I just want to, I don't want to, this be the whole show. So just to close up.
I did want to bring this up, though. I
There are
apologize.
reports
I don't want to
coming-
hijack the show.
There are reports coming out of ABC that people within the network, I mean, people that work there, were upset at the brass for not editing the show. The show's not live, right? So the question you have to ask yourself is, how did this make it past? What's that word? What's the name of the people that view the show?
The censors.
So they let this on the air. So whoever there is to blame, it is the people that let this on the air. ABC could have edited this out and this never would have been an issue. They chose to leave this in, go on. And I'm sure Jimmy Kimmel, who is the king alpha over there, said, you're leaving this in. So with that, with great power comes great responsibility, and you lost your job with it. At this point, Golan, they have a rest of their network that they have to think about. That's just the reality right now. Is your one show on a failing network? You bring up Disney, another failing network. They're losing money hand over fist. And if your standard bearer crossed the line because he probably made the decision not to cut that himself.
I agree with you. Guys like Kimmel are given deliberately creative autonomy. So that means, yes, if he did something that pissed off all of his affiliates and the affiliates were like, I'm out of here, consequences received, I am totally okay with that.
Well, that's what they said. That's the report, is that Nexstar
and
decided
if Brandon
to...
Carr hadn't come out and said, yeah, we made clear that if they didn't do that, we were going to blah, 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 which he did do, then it changes the game. And that's my issue with it, because if we're pretending that we are the champions of free speech, and then we're doing this, this feels like not that. It feels like regulatory harm. And to me, we've become de facto censors in a way that we don't want to. We don't want to. This is what bothers me.
I hear what you're saying, and I am shedding zero tears over Jimmy Kimmel losing his job. It goes to the deeper rot at Disney. I mean, we saw Disney producers saying that they inject LGBTQ IA plus minus question mark into every single movie they make. It's not about a representation of what the society looks like, where maybe 2% of the movies at Disney would have to mimic 2% of the population, if it's that much, that are gender queer or whatever. No, they were injecting it into every single movie. And here too, you have the executives giving a guy like Jimmy Kimmel free reign. He's their poster boy. He's their spokesperson. This is supposed to be a family-friendly channel, and they had a divisive, angry, Democratic shill running as their face of the company. So listen, if they thought that they were going to face some repercussions during this multi-billion-dollar merger, and that's why they had to let him go because he said some idiotic things that were not true. I mean, for the party that always claimed about wanting to have a misinformation czar and all that other stuff, to have people like him spewing nonsense daily, for to have people throughout the entire Democratic apparatus calling every single Trump voter a Nazi. Listen, this is what you get. Sorry. Tears, no tears, not sorry.
Well said, both of you. And I think it's extremely important that people can debate on these topics, and even within the same party could have diverging views. Now, when I do have a problem with diverging views in the Republican Party is when there's a censure vote for Ilhan Omar and 4 Republicans decide to go with the Democrats. Now, here's the interesting thing, and I really want people to understand. So I think we only have room to lose 2, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody could fact check me on that one. But you had Tom McClintock from California, right? From Northern California, a person with redistricting who cannot afford to lose his seat. So I have no problem if Tom McClintock decides to vote a certain way, but please don't tell us it's for free speech, okay? It's so you can continue to be a congressman. It nothing to do with free speech. Then you have Hurd from Colorado. Now he's from the 3rd district in Colorado, which was very close in the last elections. So he too is worried about winning his next election. But again, he also said free speech. Now this guy Flood, not a clue why he did it. He's from Nebraska, District 1. He's a MAGA guy. He's never had any issues with this stuff. I have no idea. He did get into trouble for saying he didn't read the big, beautiful bill, but passed it anyways. Now, here's where it gets really wonky is Corey Mills in Florida. So Corey Mills apparently worked out a deal with the Dems because the Dems were going to censor him. I had heard stories about Corey Mills, and there are a lot of alleged abuse of women. There's also stolen valor attributed to Corey Mills. So the left was threatening him, and he voted against censoring her. And guess what? They immediately voted Golan not to censor him.
Called that tit for tat. This is just infuriating because if anybody should be censured, it is Ilhan Omar. Cannot believe I have to explain this to these 4 Republicans. By the way, if even one of them had gone the other way, had not defected from the party, this would have passed. Okay.
Yeah.
She is a sitting member of Congress.
Thank you for correcting me. So it's 1, not 2.
It's fine. You said it. I wanted to make sure that was clear for our listeners. But first of all, let's begin with the fact that she was openly mocking verbal, just diarrhea coming out of her mouth about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Just nasty, vile stuff, just on a human level. She is a trash fire of humanity. And okay, let's say that's free speech. All right, but it's still vile, disgusting, dangerous rhetoric from someone who is literally sitting in the halls of power. That added to years of anti-American, anti-Israel, anti-freedom, anti-democracy, anti-Semitic comments. She shouldn't even be in office at all, but she absolutely should be punished for everything that she says. And let's be real. She isn't stupid, right? She got here. We can dislike her, but she's not stupid. She knew how to game the system. She knew how to break the law and get away with it, and what loopholes she could exploit and everything else. And here she played the victim like she always does. She wrapped herself in identity politics as usual, and she made sure that in doing so, her party would cover for her. And in doing so, she got these four Republicans to cover for her as well. And that's a true disgrace. And if they think the voters are going to reward them for what are they going to call it? Bipartisanship? Then they're delusional. They can see that these 4 are protecting Ilhan Omar. They were the 4. Forget all the Democrats. Those 4 made this not pass. It doesn't look principled. It looks weak. These guys also need to be kicked out of office.
So, Mend, I want to go to you with this quickly, though, because this is often done, right? The problem is it's oftentimes there are a few congressmen that need cover, right? So somebody like Tom McClintock, who could be redistricted or lose, they need cover. The flood thing I don't get, and the Corey Mills thing is a disgrace. To save his own ass because he can't, how do we say this? He can't control his hands or whatever it is, betrayed the party. I don't think there's any other way of saying it. And it's infuriating that this was allowed.
One is, it's not going to save them. So it may have saved him from his censorship, right? They were censoring him, and he just saved Ilhan Omar, and immediately they dropped the censorship that they were doing against him. So, or the censor charges. That's number one. Number two, look at Elliot Engel in New York. You could be as great as you want to the Democratic Party. You'll never be woke enough, and they will primary you and they will kick you out the second they have a chance. And that's
Jamal
to their own
Bowman
members.
will replace you.
That is to their own members. He was a Democrat. You don't think they would run against a Republican? These people are delusional. They should have voted to censure her.
I want to ask you, though, both a question, and I really want to get your takes on this. We're pretty much free speech absolutionists. I know in the beginning, obviously, Mend and you are disagreeing with certain things, but this is where companies, businesses are separate than the private, or this isn't your personal
From the government?
from the government.
Mhm.
So,
That was my argument earlier. Continue.
But again, I understand your argument, but I understand Men's argument at the same time. So I'm not going to take sides. I truly understand both, but that's not what I want to ask. So this thing about free speech comes out and they say you have free speech. So an NFL team could have a player that says something on his social media, and the NFL could then fire him because it's not becoming of the team, which we're witnessing a lot of right now, people getting fired for the worst things you could say about Charlie Kirk. So my question to you is this: because all of them are saying it's free speech, but my question is, when you're in the Congress and are you a social media influencer, or are you a congresswoman or congressman? Go on. And this is where the lines get extremely blurred. She represents a district, and somebody could say, well, they should vote her out. But at the same time, she's representing the United States of America. And the United States of America could say, you could say whatever you want, but not on social media, not via this, as when you're tweeting from your congressional account.
Look, you bring up a really wonderful point, and unfortunately, as it stands right now, the people in Congress don't have fireable speech when it comes to this sort of thing. What will happen if they write something that their constituents don't like is, and that's the answer, is if you work for a company and you do something that is unbecoming, you'll get fired for that because you are representing the company. The company doesn't want you around for one reason or another. To me, totally makes sense. Free speech doesn't mean speech without consequences. But if you're an elected official, that means the group you work for, it's not even the government. You work for your voters, and there is no boss. The boss is whoever voted for you. The employer is your district. So if the voters in that district don't like what you're saying, then the ballot box is where they deal with it, and they vote them out in the next election. And so, yeah, unfortunately, that does not exist. Now, within the House and the Senate, they can discipline their own members. That's what the censure was about, right? It's like a public shaming.
That's my point.
But you don't lose your office for being reprimanded or censured.
Well, nobody was
right?
saying lose their office.
You can get your committee assignment stripped away. There is, by the way, a nuclear option that results in expulsion, but that's like you need a 2/3 vote. And not only is it extremely rare in this day and age when everything is like every party line is delineated and everyone stands on their side. I mean, most of the time, except for these 4 defectors, you are seeing one party's going to vote on their side, the other party's going to vote on their side. To see a 2/3 vote would require an act of God at this point, and it's probably not going to happen again. And history shows that bar is very high anyway. No, so the answer is no.
Man.
Okay, so when it comes to FCC and what they're allowed and not allowed to do, because we are all about free speech, right?
Wait, are you answering the previous question or this question?
I'm first going to start on the previous question because I wanted to go back to that for a second. So we are about free speech, and it is a slippery slope because if we do it to them, they could then do it to us, right? Which is what they've been doing for the last 4 years. And now,
not the last 4 years, the last 25 years.
25 years. And now it looks like there's a little bit of retribution, right? It appears that way, especially with Jimmy Kimmel, the despicable human being. But if you look at the statute of what the FCC is allowed to regulate and what they're not allowed to regulate, they have no say over what goes on the internet or on cable. It's just over the actual airways that the stations have to buy licenses to. So it prohibits the broadcast of false information about a crime or a catastrophe if it meets all of the following criteria. The broadcaster knows the information is false. Broadcasting the false information is likely to cause and does in fact cause substantial public harm. That's vague. What does that mean, substantial public harm? Substantial public harm is defined as the immediate and actual damage to property or the health and safety of the public, or the diversion of law enforcement and other public safety authorities. So does the Kimmel thing meet that? I mean, we're talking about a killing, an execution that just happened. And it happened, we could say pretty conclusively, because of the rhetoric coming out of the left. What they are saying and what they have been saying for the last God knows how many years, that everyone on the right is a Nazi, and this kid thought he had to kill the anti-trans Nazi. So I think it meets that criteria. I don't think this is an overstep.
I'm sorry, what did he say about that? Just remind me.
What did Kimmel say?
Yeah, that had to do with, you're talking about stuff he said on other shows in general, like his general vibe? You're talking about this thing he got fired for today?
I would say both.
Okay, so what was it today, the thing he actually got pulled off the air for, that relates to what you're talking about right now?
Saying that the killer was part of the MAGA gang, when for the last 8 years, we've been hearing that MAGA is Nazi.
Let's be really specific. Since we speak for a living, let's be really specific. You're going to make me defend Kimmel here, which I can't believe I'm doing. Did he say that this guy was part of the MAGA gang?
Yeah,
no,
that's what he said.
No, he didn't. What he said was that the MAGA people are working overtime to show that he isn't. And that is not the same thing.
I'm looking at a quote, and I might be wrong here, but it says, including the assertion that Kirk's assassin was part of the, quote, MAGA gang.
That is not a quote.
All right, maybe I'm
what Golan is saying to you is that's what you could extrapolate from what he was saying. That it's not exactly that he was playing a very loosey-goosey with the words that he was using.
Just for the listeners, I'll make one sentence. We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them, and doing everything they can to score political points from it. That's what he said. That's the quote.
6 of one, half of a dozen of the other at this point. I really want to move on. You both have stated your cases. I think they're both compelling. I think they're both extremely important to talk about. So I don't think there's a wrong here, and I don't think there's a right. Sometimes you could just say, I don't know. And this is very...
And I'll say this. And if it was strictly a I don't like what he said thing, I would side with you, and I would say, no, this is an overstep by the government. But I think there's more to it here. I think that we are on the precipice of extreme violence exploding in this country from both sides. So you're going to see right now it's been the left. A lot of assassinations have been coming from the left. The assassination culture on the left is very big. The amount of people on the right with guns is tremendous. If these guys really feel threatened, as the left miscategorically feels threatened, then you're going to see a lot of bloodshed and violence, and we don't want to get to that. So if the FCC determines that this actually does lend clear and present danger to public safety, they have the right to take action against him. And that's where I land on this one. If it was strictly something that he said that I didn't like, I could pound sand. Like, when I walk into the gym every single day, if I see The View up on the TVs, I go up to the guys at work there. I'm like, guys, this is UFC. Get that off. What are you doing? And they immediately change it. They'll put on sports. I don't care who they put on. Put on Stephen A. Smith. Doesn't matter. As long as it's not the brain melting View or something like Jimmy Kimmel.
And that's what I support. Change the channel.
You both have made your case very well. So congratulations to both of you. And I'm not saying that jokingly. I'm saying it's extremely important that we talk about this.
Well, also because the boomerang effect could also spin around and hit us in the face when we're least expecting it.
And I'll counter with that. We've been hit with the boomerang effect as much as humanly possible. I'm not exactly sure, after putting away people for 30 years on January 6th and Trump being convicted on 94 counts, I'm not sure what more they could do to us, going after us with the IRS. You go down the list of things that they've done. I don't think this is why, it's a very hard sell, especially in the conservative community. We get what you're saying, but if we don't fight fire with fire, they will never stop fighting us. Persecutions and prosecutions will never stop. I want to move on because Trump did something extremely important, which was naming Antifa a terrorist organization. Congratulations. I think that's an amazing first step. It means anybody that's associated, anybody that's tied with it, they could investigate the money. It means a lot.
It's about time. Thank God they're doing it. Should have been done a long time ago, but thank God they're doing it. So I'm with you on this one.
But go on. It's a good day in America that that Donald Trump did this. I hope he does this with the Tides organization, any organization that is linked to Soros. I think we would all be happy with that and have absolutely zero issues.
Antifa is one of those funny things that for a very long time, we've been talking about this terrorist organization clearly being a terrorist organization. They mask themselves. They're anarchists burning cities down, smashing windows, screaming for justice while they're committing domestic terror left and right. They're clearly a terrorist organization.
Yeah,
And
I mean, there's no like doubt about it. I mean,
there's no doubt about it. There was never doubt about it.
And this to Men's point, this is like one of those things. I always say to people, man, not to cut you off, Golan, but I always say to people, go for the low hanging fruit. Okay. You don't always need to go for the deep and the dark. Just start with the things you could instantly get.
But here's the thing. Remember Biden in 2020? Remember what he said? Antifa is not a terrorist organization because it's just an idea. This reminds me of everyone who's like, you can't beat Hamas because it's an idea. You can't ever stop the Nazis. It's just Churchill, don't try. It's just an idea. What the hell are you all talking about?
And this goes back to what we've been talking about.
This is a group with coordinated violence, and it's about time
they
that
seized they seized the city. They seized
Seattle. Chop.
They literally seized the city. I don't know what more could be said about you being a terrorist than you seizing a city, you taking over streets, you firebombing police stations.
100%.
I don't even. So I am so glad that President Trump did this. And yes, it's time. It was a good time, man, right?
Great time. I'm very happy about that. I think in the indictment, he should not call it Antifa. He should just call them fascists, the fascist organization, because they love to do that where they give themselves a name, anti-fascists, but then they actually are fascists. It's the exact opposite.
Yeah, it's like people that say they're spiritual, never are. People that say they're non-judgmental, always are. Yes, so if you say you're an anti-fascist, good chance you probably are a fascist. So we could all agree, great move by President Trump. Bravo.
Bravo.
100%. And I think let's make it easy. You yesterday said something. The minute you do X, Y, and Z, you now fall into this category. I think the same thing here. The second you start stockpiling bricks to throw them at people, you coordinate riots over Telegram that you then execute, which means lighting cop cars on fire and burning buildings and everything else, and you attack actual human beings, attack citizens, in some cases murdering them, I would say, yeah, let's go ahead and call you a terrorist organization. Period. It's the strangest thing that it took this long.
You've crossed you've crossed that line of no return.
You know, it reminds me of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. You know what that is? That's North Korea, the Democratic Antifa, anti-fascist. So we're going to throw a brick at you and disturb everyone in town. What are you talking?
Can I tell you something that I find very disturbing, guys? So yesterday, sadly, in Pennsylvania, 5 police officers were shot.
4 or 5,
and two are dead, obviously more in critical condition. And nobody's talking about this story. And I realized as I was thinking about it, you want to know why nobody's talking about this story? Because it doesn't fit anybody's narrative.
Correct.
It was a deranged white shooter that did this, and it doesn't fit the grifters on this side's narrative, and it doesn't fit the grifters on this side's narrative. And because of that, we're not honoring and giving a day now to police officers that were slaughtered.
You know, I met a kid who was a guy, young man and his girlfriend recently. And he told me that he wanted to go to the police academy or apply for a job. I think he already went through police academy, apply for a job in San Diego. And I said, why would you? Why would you, especially in a city that does not back up the police? Like, you're going to be out on a call. Someone's going to pull a gun on you. They're going to fire at you, and you're going to have to think twice what you do in return. Do you pull out your mace or your baton? Because if you pull out that gun, the city itself will not have your back. And the same thing here. You're seeing a under the previous administration, there was a massive move to demonize the police, defund the police. They elevated a fentanyl crackhead, George Floyd, to the highest level of sainthood, while all the police across the nation were painted with the same brush as a couple of bad cops. Why would anyone want to become a cop? And then the aftermath, the results of that would be really unsafe cities, especially for the poor, because anybody with money will hire their own security, which they're doing.
Remember that cop in New York City that threw his helmet at the criminal
And the
that
kid
was
crashed his bicycle or whatever, and he died or something.
right, and the cop got into trouble for throwing his helmet. But go on to the bigger point is obviously people are not, other than people not just not talking about this. And to Men's point of we're having a hard time getting police officers to have a job, this goes to the whole narrative that police are always saying. You never know what you're getting into when you knock on a door, knock on a window. Those are the scariest moments for any police officer and for anybody that would say, well, you should have a social worker go with the police.
Right.
Oh, yeah, that would have worked out perfectly yesterday for the social worker.
Then you also would have had a dead social worker.
Right.
Yeah, there would be 4 dead cops and a dead social worker.
And a dead social worker. Really, really wonderful. The thing that scares me about this, it's scary enough already that we are in a world where the media ecosystem rewards outrage and there's no learning of anything, because how do we better enforce laws? We see what happens, and as a result, we learn something from it, right? That's the thing that scares me the most. Because just like, Mend and I were in the military, and we both, I think you'll back me up on this, you learn. Sometimes you learn through basic training, and sometimes you learn because you're in the middle of an effed up situation, and suddenly you're like, I just learned something on the job that I never could have gotten in basic training. And the more situations you find yourself in, the more experienced you become, the more you learn, the more you're able to respond to it. Think about this. If you don't tell us about these, what they call narrative orphaned stories, it guarantees repetition of these stories. If we don't study them, if we don't see what happened, then we don't learn. If we don't learn, they happen again. And each time it happens and it gets orphaned, it disappears from the news cycle because it can't be weaponized. It doesn't fit that narrative. Each time it will once again, it basically forces it to occur again because nobody can see the signs of it coming. And meanwhile, politicians are going to scream about their preferred villains instead of fixing real systemic holes. And that is the really scary part of this. It basically means that whatever's on fire now is going to be on fire again.
We've talked about this, and it comes down to the Ukrainian girl who got slashed in the neck, and the mayor's response is a perfect example of that. She was thanking the news media for not reporting the story because it would create more racialized violence or
whatever she perceived.
She thought it was going to create more racism because a black guy slashed and slit a white girl's throat.
Who knows? By the way, who knows? It could have been she didn't want to take the fall for mental health problems on the street. She didn't want it. She didn't want racism. Whatever the reason is, she swept it under the rug deliberately and thanked everyone for doing so. That's what
we also saw, much like in the UK, where they swept a lot of the gang rapes by Muslim Pakistanis of little white girls under the rug for 20 years, and over 200,000 girls have been raped in these what they call grooming gangs. But let's call it what it is. It's Pakistani rape gangs that come to their country that don't believe in the culture of the UK, and they believe that taking advantage of the poor little white girls is the way to move forward. These are sick individuals. We're seeing the same thing here, where you have government agencies across the board that are booking black criminals, and they list them as race white. And there's a lot of them that are documented. So the stats that we're seeing as far as racial violence is completely skewed. And even so, you are 8 times more likely to be attacked by a black person than you are to be attacked by a white person. So the black on black violence, black on white violence is off the charts. 15% of the population is black. 3% of it is black males. They commit 45% of all violent crimes in this country. So there is a problem that the media just wants to sweep under the rug. And if you don't address it, if you don't call it out by what it is just destined to repeat itself. So I would like to see 0 black on black violence, 0 black on white violence, 0 white on black violence, like all of that. Get rid of it. The way you get rid of it is by having accurate info and locking up the bad guys. If you're letting a person out of jail who was in and out 14, 15 times, you're not doing him a service. You're definitely not doing a service to your public. They've lost their moral compass. and we need to get back to that.
Well said. And Golan, I have never been, I think we're of the age group because we're all similar age, men being the oldest, even though he looks the youngest. I have never had, and this goes to two things, right? I have never been fascinated, and I learned this in college, never argue with a baby boomer about how great the Kennedys were. That was one thing I learned in college. And the other thing I was never enamored by was the crown. Right. I've never been. And President Trump obviously is. And I could not be happier for President Trump. Right. It was Prince Charles that invited him there. And he deserves this. If anybody deserves to get this, the horses, just the whole thing, the royal treatment, is President Trump. And I could not be happier for him. And I just found that he could not help himself when he was talking about Prince William, about how great of a son you have. It was like a knock on Prince Harry. And you gotta love Trump, and the Britons will love him even more for that. And I'm very happy for him. I'm not of that age that I love especially when I know the history of it, but I'm very happy for President Trump. He deserves this. He deserves this salute.
Mend, I actually want to hand it off to you because you had some stuff you were talking to us about with the number of guns and all of that. I'm curious. Help us out.
Yeah, so this is so great because the lefties are losing their minds over this because the Brits are rolling out the red carpet for Trump.
Rolling out the red carpet. They're rolling out every horse they have in the UK.
Of course, they're bringing out the donkeys, the horses, everything. King Charles pulled out all the stops to welcome President Trump and First Lady to the UK for his second state visit. There's no world leaders that get two invites by the crown. So they are really trying to kiss Trump's ass, which is fantastic. So they were met with a 41 gun salute. And why 41 guns? So the whole idea behind a 21 gun salute was it goes back to like when they had ships and they had 7 cannons and they would fire their cannons 3 times to show the other side that they were unloaded and then they were no threat so that the two sides could meet. That was the 21 gun salute. But the Brits like to do this 41 gun salute for like land-based things. So like they went above and beyond with this rolling out the red carpet for Trump, which is fantastic.
It is. It's a beautiful thing to watch, even though Golan, I don't get it, but Trump does. He's of that age. He's of that generation. And I'm really happy for him. And I'm happy that he doesn't hold back. I'm happy that he's like standing next to Starmer going, we agree on most things minus a 2-state solution in Israel. The dude just doesn't care. Wait, no, let me rephrase that. The dude cares so much that he doesn't care where he is or who, if he's standing next to you. That's a man. You know, people always talk about that. How many people will say things behind people's backs? He said right next to Starmer, we agree on most things, but not that 2-state solution, you kook. You gotta love Trump. God bless him for getting this privilege and honor.
And by the way, the optics of that were chef's kiss, because here's this British prime minister trying to, he's trying to make this big statement, show what a big shot he is, as of course his country is falling apart and his popularity rating is absolutely in the toilet. And so he's walking towards that recognition of Narnia. I'm sorry. Did I say Narnia? I meant Palestine. Same thing. And then President Trump goes, wait a second. Strategy, peace, protecting our ally of Israel. What were you talking about again? And it was just beautiful for him to have moral clarity, as we always are talking about, to show what actual alliances are. This is where allies come from, is the word alliances. And what they're doing right now in the UK and in other places too, Macron, etc., is not allyship. And no moral compromises, because the thing the UK is doing is not just recognizing Palestine, it's recognizing Palestine that they've always said had certain conditions, and they just threw the conditions out, like the hostages, like Hamas not being in power. Now, what does that mean? If they allow this to occur, let's just think about it for a moment. It means that Palestine becomes a real place. And if Palestine becomes a real place and Hamas hasn't been removed from power, that means Hamas becomes a legitimate government of a legitimate place, which means, at least for the countries that recognize Palestine, they can set up an embassy. that embassy is untouchable by most governments. And it means that when people run into that embassy, like in the movies, they are untouchable as well, except in very, very specific circumstances. And so essentially what they're saying is, let's set up an outpost for this terrorist organization where they can hide anybody they want from our streets and we can't touch them. Sounds brilliant, Starmer. I love that Trump went at him to point out how effing stupid this is.
You know, the Turkish recap Erdogan, he's come out and said that they colonized Jerusalem for 1,000 years, and there's no way that they're going to allow the Israelis to permanently take back Jerusalem, their ancestral homeland. So you're seeing insane rhetoric come out from the Arabs. Things like Jerusalem as the capital of Palestinians. There never was a Palestinian nation or state. They invented that, the Russians helped them invent that in the 60s. So what is the problem here? What are we seeing? What we're seeing is that the world looks at the democracy that is Israel and says, these guys are very much like us and we could apply pressure to them. When they look at the Arabs, they go, these guys are very much not like us. They are way more likely to be blowing up our airplanes and taking our civilians hostage. So let's be really nice to them. And I think Israel needs to flip that script. Israel, there's a concept that Israel likes to be viewed as the crazy person in the Middle East so that the insane genocidal Arabs don't mess with them, because you don't know how bad the response will be when you mess with them. And we're seeing that unfold in Gaza right now, where the Gazans stormed across the border and the Israelis are dropping a heavy hammer on Gaza, which I fully support. Absolutely. You don't want that. Don't start this fight, but you started it, and Israel's going to have to show you what will be. And they should take that same approach to the international community, where you think you're going to coerce us. The response that we will give you will be 1,000 times worse than had you guys come to us and gently coerce the other side to release our hostages, or forcefully coerce the other side to release our hostages. Same thing with Qatar. They could pressurize Qatar to release the hostages and it would be over tomorrow.
Well said, both of you. I just want to bring up two quick things. Found it really interesting because none of us could make it past Obama's first statement yesterday when he was being interviewed about talking about Charlie Kirk and then blaming it on Trump. But the second part of it was him equating Hamas and the IDF. Way to go, Obama, our former president. And go on, I'm not even sure you saw that because it was so disturbing listening to the clip of the first thing that we don't get to the second thing sometimes, and to the full. And this is our former president, right? Supposedly our former president, and who literally bowed to the Muslims. Which was one of the most disgraceful acts. And I don't want people to forget that when he went on his Muslim apology tour. And the second thing I want to bring up is immediately, so we brought up that thing with Megyn Kelly, talking about Candace Owens for 19 minutes on a panel. Eric Bolling, who is former Fox News, former somewhere else, and who sits on the board of Turning Point USA, came out and said today, this is absolutely ludicrous, this story. Candace Owens and Charlie haven't been friends, and, he never wanted to go down that rabbit hole. So we had 19 minutes quickly debunked by Eric Bolling, and the problem is, once the story gets out, it's out. And Eric Bolling, I'm really glad that he came on and right away said, this is insane. And I just want to go to both of you with this. There's a New York Times piece that came out that says China, Russia, and who I can't remember the other country are using this now against us, right? Again, with the bot farms. And if you don't understand what we say when we say this, go on X and look at how many likes they get on a comment. I didn't even put two and two together, man. People were getting 63,000 dumb comments you could ever see. And I was like, where are these comments coming from? And yeah.
Elon knows that there's a bot problem. When he bought the app, I think he said there's something like 60% of the users were bots. They know there's a bot problem. I just don't think they know how to fix it. And it's not that hard for them to crack down on that. Sure, some of these places use VPNs, but IP logging, and there's also device information. It's kind of like cookies of the device. Each device has a fingerprint based on which browsers are installed, what your preferences are. There are things that they could use to identify these devices and make sure that they're not 100%. All in the same location. They're not employing.
Can you imagine that you own a company, and you bought a company for $44 billion or whatever he paid, and you really wanted to do a deep dive into getting rid of the bots, and all of a sudden, like, you lost 60% of your.
That's part of the problem, is that it really devalues the company. And when he was negotiating with them, I was hoping that he was going to pull out. He was going to pull out at the end. Remember, he was talking about pulling out. I'm not going to do it. It's too many bots and all of that. And at the
Yeah,
end,
they forced him to buy
they
it, by the way.
sued him and forced him to do it. But I was hoping
Their
that
biggest mistake.
he was going to force them to drop the price because of the bots, which would have been an admission that it was riddled with bots.
So
So
go
listen,
on. I just want to go to you with this because Candace Owens comes out, the New York Post reported this, especially with Eric Bolling. Not that it needed reporting, but I'm glad they did. And she called them agents of Mossad. That's who the New York Post is. They're agents of the Mossad. So Rupert Murdoch, it's a Rupert Murdoch-owned company, and how much he loves Trump. All of a sudden, yes, that's the answer. It's a Mossad company. That's her response.
that's what whose response?
Candace Owens.
Candace Owens. This is every bombshell that she throws out there. Then when it's debunked, of course, her going down rabbit holes and making stuff up and lying and everything else. Same thing we've seen over and over again. And this, I think we've all noticed by now. Anything that they say, and I'm talking, you go ahead and you decide who they is, okay? Anything that they say is actually, everything they accuse someone of is the thing that they are doing. So when you go through the New York Times, for example, and you see the just gargantuan percentage of anti-Israel, anti-Jewish stories, right? And then they say, hey, this is not fair. The reporting is skewed and there's a problem here. And then you hear the other side. The Muslims are like, hey, there's Islamophobia and all the reporting is getting us killed and the Gazans are dying as a result of your reporting. But the numbers don't bear that out. They just say that because enough people just look at what was shouted out on social media and they believe it. And so they continue to do this. And this is Candace's trick too. Candace will throw something out there. I call it throwing the grenade. And then when everyone else is trying to deal with the grenade, she's like, can you believe they threw grenades around here? It's what she does all the time. And so
I just love how Mark Levin posted it. He goes, good job, influencer morons. You clowns are doing our enemies' work. And it's Russia, China, and Iran who are part of this bot farm. And I just want to, if you guys will bear with me for a second, because I think it's really important. We love the people on Truth and we love interacting with them. And I got this message from somebody and it was such a long message and it was such a good message. I wanted to leave it to the two of you for help answering this. So if you'll bear with me, I'm not going to say who the person is, but he said, Judah, so I have a favor to ask. First, let me say, when you want to know the truth about something, it's imperative that you go to the right source, correct? For instance, if I want to go to know the truth about Trump, I wouldn't go to Trump haters or the Marxist left. If I want to know more about God, I wouldn't go to a Muslim or the devil. If I want to know about Jew haters, I wouldn't go to a Jew hater. So here's the favor I'm asking you, and parentheses, anti-Jew mongers, do not reply, not interested in your anti-Jew rhetoric. As briefly as you can, explain to me, for them, what is this anti-Jew rhetoric that has emerged even in the so-called Christian circles? I'm not confused by Satan. Him I know. Explain who these people are. Where did they come from? Parentheses, domestics. Where did this BS come from? And why do people who call themselves Christian contradict the Christian truth when it comes to Jew ideological, since Jesus is a Jew? And why are they saying that the Jew is no more, there are no Jews left, and that Jesus was not a Jew? I hope that's enough info to get an answer I'm looking for. So I just wanted to say that, I'm very proud of the stuff we post and we talk about, that somebody felt comfortable enough to ask a question like that. And I will go to both of you, who I look at far more knowledgeable than anything I could say to answer this question.
I think there are three major reasons why today Jews are rejected by Christians. And I'll just add that Christian hate against the Jews is probably one of the most dangerous things that is occurring right now, because the Muslims, they are born and bred to hate the Jews. The Nazis are born and bred to hate the Jews. The woke right and the crazy left, that's their bread and butter. But when the Christians have been convinced to do it, that's when the world will fall. Okay, we can put aside the early stuff where they said, oh, the Jews rejected Christ, or they didn't accept him as the Messiah, so they're cursed. Fine, that's old stuff. Even the deicide thing, where they for 2,000 years they said the Jews killed Christ. We've heard that story. I think nobody buys it anymore except for the really ideologically stupid. So why today? because conspiracy theories. Remember the people who love to chant Jews will not replace us? This great replacement theory that basically says the Jews are bringing in illegal immigrants to replace us and replace the white people and all of this. It's silly as silly can be, especially in all these places where the people that are being brought in are Muslims who want to kill all the Jews. Think for a moment, guys, and you'll see that it doesn't make any sense. But that conspiracy theory has really sunken deep into certain parts of the Christian community. The last one is the one that actually applies the most. Number one reason that modern day Christians dislike the Jews is because of lies on social media. The internet supercharges hate. Medieval blood libels pop up again, but now they're tweets. Jews harvesting organs, Jews controlling Hollywood. They talk about Russia's because of the Jews, Iran's because of the Jews, extremism. We're going to put boots on the ground because of the Jews. All of these conspiracy theories that the internet proliferates are the primary reason ordinary Christians scrolling on Facebook see it repeated often enough, or Instagram, or whatever it is, and they start to think maybe there's something to it. It's the same garbage, just now with graphics and faster distribution. I think that is the number one reason.
I think it's perfectly said.
One thing that they don't like to mention when they talk about the Jews forcing illegal immigration, all this other nonsense, is that the deporter in chief, the architect of the securing of our borders, is Stephen Miller. That they don't want to give credit to. That they will never say, oh, thank God we have this Jew on the Trump admin team who's helping secure our country, who's getting rid of all of the illegal aliens and securing the future for our children.
It's important to note for all of our listeners, especially those people out there that are Christians, we just gave you an answer to that question, but the story doesn't end in hate. Millions and millions of Christians all over the world, especially evangelicals, they stand shoulder to shoulder with Israel and the Jews. They see through the propaganda. They know what their Bible says. It confirms the Jewish and Christian relationship. These are the people that actually matter.
We're talking about a fringe, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. The vast majority of Christians believe that we are brothers in arms, we are brothers in religion, we are Abrahamic religion, the Old Testament they believe in, and they support Israel, and we support them.
Perfectly said, both of you. I would really want to thank him for the question. And people, please send us your questions. We will do our best to answer. Remember, everybody is susceptible to online hate and online vitriol. And again, a majority, if not 90% of Christians are aligned with Jews and Israel. It's that small percentage that's the loudest. Also, younger generation that might be causing a little bit of chaos because of what they are buying online by the grifters.
And the terrorist propaganda.
And the terrorist propaganda, and nobody is immune to this. And I'm not gonna put words into Charlie Kirk's mouth, but he actually makes me want to be a better Jew, because when he talks about the Sabbath the way he does, it makes me, as a sometimes not the most practicing Jew, want to practice it a little more. So on that note, I will thank Charlie Kirk for that. I want to thank everybody that's been listening to the show, everybody that's been following the show. You could find us at thedailycheatsheet.com is where you go, thedailycheatsheet.com. So thank you again from the bottom of our hearts. I want to wish everybody a good morning, afternoon, and night world, wherever you are. God bless you all.